A room with a view of the whole city. Fashion luxury, that's what he's got pretty.
I just vented my frustration about the Cologne Bonn airport, so full of emotions, and I am staying on topic. Yes, we will go through some points one after the other because I have 3 points. First, the airport itself, then the security there, and the lounge. So there are 3 videos. This is now video 2 and could also be 3, whatever. I was so frustrated with this Cologne Bonn airport that I already love my Hamburg airport again, even though it is also terrible, but I love it before I ever fly from Cologne Bonn again. Cologne Bonn has this long layout, yes, and above all a complete confusion and a blocked part of something. Please watch the video. It is really unbelievable what I have seen there. But today we are coming to the topic of security, meaning the security check at Cologne Bonn airport. My goodness, it's unbelievable what I have to experience. First of all, it's one of those things where you don't even see that it's what it is. Then they have it divided with 3 or 4 entrances. You go in normally, and then you have the entrance for something like slot and fly, which you can book. Well, you don't really know. It opens automatically. There is no staff. No one is there, so there is no one to inform you or anything. It's just been eliminated. And then there's the fast lane, so you can go in there, and there's someone at the front who checks, yes, that could have been done away with, unnecessary, yes, and then you would have gone straight through, and then let's assume you are just a regular guest flying with Ryanair. Then you go through the normal security, just like everywhere else. Yes, so that's the standard area. Everything just takes a little longer and you have to factor in a certain waiting time here as well. But what I wouldn't have thought is that I would have an extremely long waiting time initially with this pre-booking. So when I book slot and fly, which they call it differently, you assume, for example, Hamburg. At Hamburg Airport, you book the topic, and then you can get through relatively quickly within 10 to 15 minutes because they have a separate security check. You go in on the right and go straight through, and then you're already inside. And here, although you enter this system, you go in specifically, but you are simply integrated into the entire system. This means you have no time advantage at all. I don't understand at all why they introduced this. This system definitely doesn't work. It works just as dramatically and horrifically as this parking system, but I haven't made a video about that now. Because even the parking system, when you drive up, they have these 10 minutes or 9 minutes and 59 seconds that you can park for free, but by the time the ticket comes out, a minute has already passed. Once you have opened the barrier, another minute goes by before you have driven in. Well, you already lose 3 minutes there, so you only have 8 minutes or 7 minutes left, and then you have to get out quickly. So it's really very difficult. But this security, we have the normal entrance, we have the pre-booking, slot and fly, and then I have the fast lane. These 3 options, then I go through the fast lane, and then you will be redirected to the right, but in the end, also into the overall system. That means you have no advantage from all those things, and it's just that you stand in line, no matter how you get there. And I also spoke with the security staff. I asked where the supervisor was, and there was also a federal police officer present, so I was able to express some of my criticisms. So there are interesting explanations. I told them, for example, that it is madness, that when I go through the fast lane, it ultimately ends up in a traffic jam. Then he says, yes, we actually don't have a fast lane. Yes, I know the system. It's this hypocritical system that only exists in Germany. Everywhere else there is a fast lane and a fast track, and that's taken for granted. But in the end, it is indeed the case that there is a kind of hypocrisy in this area in Germany. But what does it matter? I said that's not what I'm concerned about. It's not about whether it exists or not, but rather it's about, for example, also this slot and fly system that you have. I can't just come in and say, even though I stand there pre-booking, I still don't get in any faster. He didn't really want to talk to me about it. I understood that it's probably a difficult topic, but still. And this is what I personally find unacceptable about this security. First of all, there was no cooling. We were really standing there in the heat. People were sweating, coughing and fidgeting, and there was no cooling. This means that this system does not work. This applies to the employees as well. It is also dramatic for the employees, and when you are standing in such heat, already in this line, and nothing is moving forward, it naturally makes you feel anxious. So that was the first point. Yes, fresh air and climate issues which do not work at this airport. That is the real nightmare. And then I said, you stand there in line and just watch how those employees work. And I mean, this is a story that I have already criticized in Hamburg, that they just chat so much privately. So that means they just talk and so on, and that always delays things further back. It's a logical process. It's like a traffic jam. A traffic jam occurs because too many cars arrive at the same time, because one car in front is always driving worse than the others, and then it backs up. It's the same here. So, if I ultimately have the option of having 2 bathtubs, one on the right and one on the left, then that's quite dramatic. They must have built that new. Why did they install such an old system there? There should be at least 3 bins on each side so that people can place their items, push through, and move ahead. And I mean, that's always the funny part. I keep hearing the same thing over and over. The supervisor says, yes, we are not here to work quickly, we are here to work safely. Unfortunately, they don't seem to be working safely either. Because what I have seen there, especially when children are present or people with veils and other things, seems to be relatively lenient. So I don't know how safe that is, to be honest. I question that. I present this from my personal perspective. I do not assume it, but I question whether this Cologne Bonn airport certainly has a security gap. It's difficult to say, but for me, that's my impression. I mention what I saw there, how everything went through, and I explained it that way. Then he says, "You need to tell us exactly what he says." I don't have to do that. It is enough that I see this and that other guests have also seen it and talked about it. And there were also arbitrary stories involved, like individual employees who, for example, spoke Arabic, Turkish or whatever, and then there was a Turkish family standing there, probably acquaintances who knew each other. And then this topic came up, and I told the supervisor, who I think is of Turkish descent or something like that it cannot be the case that there is a security staff member standing up front, waving over to the line and making a gesture like, "I'll be right there, just go ahead." And then he comes, and you see how he comes. Other guests have seen it too, and then he takes them and guides them through on his left side so that they can get through quickly. And I have to say we were guests who were angry, not just me, but also the others who were standing next to me. And then, of course, it was discussed, and I thought, okay, I will bring this up with the security supervisor and tell him that this is not acceptable. And he said, they also need to tell me who that was so that we can take consequences. I am not here to denounce people. I am here to briefly ask them a question about the general topic, to share my criticism with them, to tell them personally, and to ask how they feel about it, what could be changed, and how it could be improved. As I said at the beginning, it's not about speed. So I then said, well, let me tell you what I mean by professional, efficient work. So if the staff there are poorly trained, they start having private conversations, or it already happens that one employee just stands there looking at his monitor and thinks, I don't care what happens. So normally he is supposed to look out for when one person is done and wave the other one over, and then make sure that they stand on this thing where they spread their hands and get checked. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't care. This means that you, as a guest, have to do it yourself. That means you have to go there on your own, then you go to that part, stand there, and then whether he is there or not, you just have to let him go, then it would be done, and he would realize it's not. But I think it doesn't matter. Then they just do citizens' money. Yes, that's the situation in 21. There is probably also some kind of payment here that, yes, is better in citizens' money than just standing in this, yes, in this security. Anyway. It is definitely frustrating for the employees, I think. And of course, it is even more frustrating for us as guests, because things are not progressing and are getting delayed more and more, simply because they are not doing their job professionally. If there were a professional standing there who would say, please come here, go over there, and then continue like that, they would have everything sorted out. They could ask you to take off your belt or to take out your liquids in advance. But they don't do any of that. Meanwhile, that's the funny part. This supervisor is standing there with this federal police officer, and they are chatting privately about this and that. And when I bring up the topic of private conversation, he says, yes, we are also just looking around here. We can't be everywhere. I say, yes, if you are chatting privately here, then you can't be everywhere. Why do they have to talk privately with their police officer here? And I just interrupted them privately. That was not a private conversation. That's exactly how it is. Yes, so much stinks in the head. I am unfortunately very honest, but I am still objective, which means I provide objective criticism. And I have to say I find it dramatic that in today's time we have extremely poorly trained staff in security, where it really is about safety, and we all know we have to almost undress to get through, that this is further slowed down by employees who do not work professionally, who have poor training, and by supervisors and federal police officers who really couldn't care less. Yes, Cologne fart. I always say, they are completely indifferent. I believe there is such a numbness that has set in. And I mean, it was already difficult in Hamburg, and it is still somewhat dramatic. The Americans have really stepped up, and things have improved a lot. But here with us, I think a time is coming, on and off, that will be dramatic, and unfortunately, it will not get better. This security issue at Cologne Bonn Airport is questionable. People are being waved through without proper checks, and there is no scrutiny to see if they're carrying anything. I mean, I just want to mention the example with this pager, where these pagers exploded, yes, and I mean, if such people have a pager and there is an explosive inside, how do they recognize that? Well, it is difficult. It is really difficult. And when there are poorly trained employees who are not motivated, I think to myself, it just makes things even more difficult. And when arbitrariness comes into play, meaning the arbitrariness of employees who provide advantages to others, while we are also standing there. It is just the way it is. If I am the security person and I see my parents there, I cannot and must not give them preferential treatment. That would be against the rules. So that simply cannot happen. Then I have to solve it differently. But so officially, so that everyone notices, and like I am the boss and the buddy and I can do it this way, I find it dramatic. I find it dramatic. The security at Cologne Bonn Airport is, in my opinion, significantly worse than at Hamburg Airport, and they have actually improved. Right now, it is the worst security in Germany for me. What is happening there, with artificially created traffic jams and waiting times of over half an hour to 3/4 of an hour, and even up to an hour when it's busy, from supervisors and federal police who unfortunately don't care about anything, I find highly disappointing, and therefore it was an absolute no-go.
Above the clouds, the